The Addiction Podcast, Point of No Return.
Hello, I'm Joni Siegel, the host of the Addiction Podcast. In 2022, over 100,000 people died from drug and alcohol abuse, and that number is growing daily. Fentanyl poisoning, pot, cocaine, heroin, and even psychedelics and alcohol all contribute to this crisis, while we're bombarded with promotions from thousands of rehabs. Newborns are born addicted, and the majority of homeless people struggle with drug addiction. Drug dealers exploit online resources to sell to teens, and antidepressant use is spiraling out of control. This podcast features brutally honest guest interviews revealing harsh realities and offering hope and solutions through their stories. We don't sugarcoat anything. Guests speak raw and real. More importantly, you'll find inspiration to understand, overcome, and achieve recovery, whether for yourself or to help others, some within your own family, many among your friends or associates. Whether you're seeking help or just a glimmer of hope, our podcast equips you with the latest insights to confront this generational battle. Many listeners tell us they want to join the fight, but do not have the time or money to act, lobby, or just help. If that's you, go to www.patreon.com/theaddictionpodcast and see how you can help.
Hi, Joni. It's so good to see you. I got so much to tell you, and I'm so excited to share with your audience what it is I have to tell you. You know, my sobriety date's July 25th, 2018. I'll be coming up on 7 years. Obviously, I hit the 6-year mark, and when I hit the 6-year mark, I got to tell you, it was wonderful. I've never been on a cruise before, so I went on a cruise with my fiance. I'm actually engaged now. So I went there to celebrate my engagement, my birthday, which is July 20th, and my sobriety, July 25th. And I got to do that on a cruise ship with somebody that loved me. It was insane.
Hi, my name is Amy Newman, and my husband Bobby and I have a business called Newman Intervention Services. We provide intervention services for families who have loved ones struggling with drug addiction. Our goal is to help individuals get the support and treatment they need to overcome addiction and start on the path to recovery. With our personalized and compassionate approach, we guide families through the challenging process of getting their loved one into rehab and onto a road of a healthier future. Together, we can make a positive difference in the lives of those affected by drugs. If you or someone you know is in need of an intervention, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Let's work together and bring hope and healing to those battling addiction.
Call 866-989-4499 today and say the word podcast to get a 10% discount. Or go to newmaninterventions.com and type in the word podcast for a 10% discount. This service comes with a free 1-hour consultation with Bobby. I think that's amazing. And I can't tell you how happy I am for you. And your story and how you got onto drugs is a particularly dark one. And it's in the past, but how did that all come about?
Well, you know, my story goes back to the early 1980s, 1981. I was, actually in 11th grade. And in 11th grade and going through high school, I was that fat kid. I think we talked about that before. So I was raised in a beach community. And I wasn't the kid that got to sneak off or ditch school and go down to a place called Toast Beach where you'd go with the girls and they'd be wearing their bikinis. I couldn't be that kid that took off the shirt because I had bigger man boobs than they did.
Oh,
So it wasn't something that was possible for me. I felt like the outside looking in. It's like being in this phone booth and you're looking at the outside world and you just can't get out of it and be a part of it. And I wanted a girlfriend. I wanted to be a part. And I think before the whole thing happened, before the actual abuse, is I started doing black beauties. And I admitted that. So the black beauties were the thing. And
what's a black beauty? What is that? What does that mean?
It's a speed. It's a speed. I think back then they had these other pills. They were called crosstops. Back then they had black beauties. And the black beauties, you would take them and you could scratch your head and your hair would stand up and your head would tingle and you lost weight. And eventually I ended up getting a girlfriend. We talked about that. I ended up getting a girlfriend who was in the Valley. and she happened to be Jewish, and didn't know that. I mean, it's my first girlfriend, the first girl I've been with, and that relationship wasn't going to happen because of her culture. Being a Jewish girl, her last name was Feingold, and it really wasn't going to happen. But you think things are real, then so my whole life things have never been real. They've always been broken. So going through high school, I was racing BMX. Now I've lost weight. I'm able to ride bikes fast, and worked for a place called Action Cycle. And I had the keys. I had the keys to this place, so I had trust. But what happened was I ended up meeting a friend at high school, and he told me about this great place to work called Miresque. It was called Miresque. Mirrors and much more, and it was located in Inglewood, down by my area where I lived. It was like the Manchester Square area. And I went to work, and I started cutting glass, and this guy would do stuff for like Broadway, J.C. Penney's back when Broadway when they were open, and you would cut this glass, and you would sand it, put it on particle board, there'd be pictures. And then what happened is the thing back then was cocaine. You couldn't afford cocaine. I mean, cocaine was $100 a gram. You get 20 grams and an ounce. An ounce is still going to cost you $2,000. And what kid can afford that? You can't. So me and my friend ended up getting up $50, and we bought a half gram of cocaine from this guy named Kevin, and we did it. We went up to the beach area. It's where they used to film Chips at. Up on the high area up there in Playa del Rey, Chips, they used to film up there. And we went up there and started cutting these lines on the cassettes. You had Led Zeppelin, Bad Company, you were chopping lines on that. And we started doing it. It was the best thing. I mean, the teeth got numb, and you're drinking the Michelob beers, and you were able to escape. It was like something I never felt before. And then, of course, I had the girlfriend. Life is complete, but there's still the brokenness, So I ended up working for this guy, and one day he asked me, he said, Lang, I like the way that you act, and would you like to learn the business of cocaine? And little did I know is he was connected to Hollywood, and there was a famous club back then. It was called the Odyssey, and he was bisexual, and he knew I had a girlfriend. And I noticed all the young boys that worked there, and we're all from the same area in Westchester. And what happened is he taught me the business of cocaine. So I had the broken home. I taught me the business. I learned how to cut it, package it. And then I would go to these clubs, and, you would see the stars, kids of the stars. You would see stars. And there was this place called the Odyssey. And the Odyssey was a club where they've written about saying that people found their identity. And that's one of the things that we're working on to change, is that a lot of us didn't find our identity. There was places there, and there was people that were grooming young kids. And one of the people that was grooming was the gentleman that I'm in a court case with now, presently. And he was there grooming young boys as well as some other people. In fact, there was just a release of a video on YouTube about a guy named Lenny Benjamin, and about a 14-year-old who shot him. And working on this documentary, I know we'll get into it, I ended up meeting that young boy who actually killed his perpetrator that was connected to this Odyssey, this club in Hollywood.
Because when you say grooming, it basically meant having sex with young men.
Well, grooming's a whole process. I mean, grooming's almost like selling a car. You're trying to convince yourself. I mean, in my situation, with Kevin, he knew I had the girlfriend, but I was also selling the cocaine, so I had the money. And at this point, I'm living with him. I'm in Marina Del Rey, living in a nice place. I'm driving nice cars. I got unlimited cocaine. And what's happened is I would see what he would do, and you would think that was never going to happen to you. But the whole time, you were actually like the trophy to get to because of the persona. When you're raised with brokenness, you put on this persona of a tough guy because, so many things happen to you. And I think it was a challenge for him until it actually happened to me. Yeah.
Right.
You are listening to the Addiction Podcast, Point of No Return. For more information on the podcast, or to reach out if you have a story you would like to share with us, go to our Facebook page by the same name, or you can email us at theaddictionpodcast@yahoo.com, or go to our website, theaddictionpodcast.com. And please remember to subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen to podcasts and give us a 5-star review.
We appreciate you listening to the Addiction Podcast, Point of No Return. We don't do this podcast because we are former addicts. We don't do this podcast because we have loved ones who have suffered from addiction. We do this podcast because we feel that addiction is one of the biggest problems facing the world today, and that no matter who you are, no matter your religion, no matter your income status, no matter your race, no matter anything about you, addiction affects you. This podcast is a free resource for anybody looking for help with addiction. If you would like to contribute to our podcast, go to www.patreon.com/theaddictionpodcast and make a donation of whatever amount you would like. Thank you for supporting us. All right. How old were you when he finally abused you?
I was 17 years old, and I think, I could talk about it because of the case. The first time was Christmas of it was 1980, and we were in this place, and he had all these $100 bills rolled up, and there was a Christmas party at the location, and he was throwing these $100 bills, and I think he ended up doing some mushrooms or something, and what happened is it was my job, so he was showing off, it's blah blah blah, and I walked up to him and I told him, Kevin, what are you doing? And what's happened is it was like me looking out for him. Even though he was loaded, he saw opportunity, and it shocked me. And what happened is it was like, I'm picking up this money and putting it back in his jacket or putting it in my pockets. And he reached down and he kissed me open mouth.
Mm.
And that was actually the first assault. So these things, have come up through therapy in my memory. And that was the Christmas of 1980. During that time, my mom was already working with law enforcement. She put a gun to his head, say, stay away from, my property. And, we wrote that in the first article when I got in contact with him. I remember I said to him, and this is how perpetrators are. This is how these individuals are, predators, is I had him on the phone. I said, Kevin, do you remember when my mother put that gun to your head? And she said, yeah, I do, Lang. He said, well, your mom was crazy. That's their comment. And I said, no, my mom loved me. She only wanted her property back.
My mom was a mom.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so I wrote that article because I know who he is. He's connected to some very big people. So that article went out without mentioning his name. It was called The Truth About Nobody Knows About Me. It was about my sexual abuse and rape. And that went in the Keys of Recovery and a couple of newspapers. So we wanted to get that out once we knew who he was. And at that time, the laws didn't change. So there was reasons for me to go after them in the court system, which is attorney claims. But what laws were different back then. So I wrote that article for safety reasons.
Yeah.
He could see that I had him on the phone. Somebody heard it. And we put that in an article, Keys to Recovery.
Yep.
They wrote, Janie and Marcus put that in the article for me, when I was on the phone with them. So,
Yeah.
But I'm at a whole different place now.
Yep. So how did you get clean? And how long were you addicted? And then how did you get clean and sober? How did that happen?
The story on that is, I got four prison numbers that I vacated. I chose not to get my record expunged. It's who I am. There's articles on my Google about high-speed pursuits, shutting down neighborhoods. I've left it there. I've actually met with the newspapers, and they've asked me, would you like us to pull it? And I said, absolutely not.
Mm.
I met with the newspaper. I think I'm the first one to write that kind of article. I met with La Crescenta Weekly, and I read in the newspaper that in a high-speed pursuit that I hit a car with an old couple in it. And I saw that article when I was sober, and I just broke down and cried. I had to know if these people were okay. And a guy by the name of Adam Vega contacted the newspaper. We met with them. How I met with them is I had her on the phone, and she said, I was there, Lang. I really don't want to talk to you. And I said, ma'am, would you give me a chance? She said, why? And I said, well, I judge myself by my intentions. I go, the world will judge me by my actions. And I was already in different newspapers showing the work I was doing in the homeless. And they gave me an opportunity. So I wrote the article, apology to the community. It was like a gigantic amends of 100,000 people.
Right.
I just wanted to say I was sorry with no excuses. And I wanted forgiveness from those people that I hit, and praise God that they were okay. It's not my job to know if they've forgiven me. I did the best I could in the article by my apology, and not making any excuses. So a lot of things happened to me. So it was down in July 25th, 2018, that year. I was down on the worst place you could be. I was on Vernon and Western. And right there, you got the gang members and, the rolling 30s. And I was at a place called First and Serve. They weren't serving anybody. There was death all around me. And I would have to steal every day. And what's happened is I didn't want to die like that. And I saw the situation around me that if I died like that, it'd be half-assed backwards. And I definitely didn't want to do that. I was having a hard time breathing, and I knew all I had to do was close my eyes. And I cried out to God, Joni. I looked at the situation. I said, God, if you save my life, I'll give it all back to you. Now, that's a story. That's stories in common with all us addicts. We all do that. You're in the police car, and you got the handcuffs on you. You think, God. This time it was different for me because I just wanted one person to say something good about me, because I knew that my mom knew that I was better than that. And I added, God, I promise. That day I ended up getting into a program acting in LA County, and that was on July 25th, 2018. And it was the worst detox ever. From that day one up until now, I have not suffered. I have not had the phenomenon. God's taken it completely away from me. I don't crave it. Getting out of the program, I've gone straight into a barbershop, and God's protected me from getting a haircut. I'm a homeless advocate. So I go into treacherous areas, whether it's Skid Row, or here in some of the encampments in Ventura. God's protected me.
Right. So you've been sober for about 6.5 years, right?
Yeah.
That's amazing. And it's very well done. I know we've talked before, and I probably said the same thing, but I know from all of the interviews that we've done that it's not easy to stay clean and sober. And you've really not just stayed clean and sober, but you've really turned your life around. You've gone like even way far above when I talked to you the last time.
Oh man,
Tell
I'm
us.
happy. I can smile today. My fiance and other people, if you go to my Google and you go to photographs of Lang Martinez, you see interviews or articles, and you never see me smile. And it wasn't because at that time I didn't have teeth. There was really nothing to smile about. And what it was about trudging the road to the. They say trudge the road to happy destiny. You just don't know when you get happy. You get to the destiny, and I am there today.
That's
I
awesome.
am there, and it's very important that people understand what it takes to get to where I'm at today. Because when they talk about the promises of being happy, joyous, and free, it's not an instant thing. When you're in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I am a member, I'm a member of a lot of things and a contender for things I don't want to be. People get on that pink cloud, and what's happened is they get to a point that they don't no longer do it, and they give up. And one of the things that people really have to understand, and I heard somebody speak on it, is that being caught up in addiction, being caught up in brokenness, is what happens is when you surrender to God and you let God take over, the situation's not always about being happy.
Right.
Sometimes it can be very lonely, but God has chosen us for something, because when you're caught up in addiction, right, and the comment I always make to somebody, we're going to the third step, about the higher power, and made a little turn my life over to how I was understanding him, God. If you're alive today, if I was to ask the addict alcoholic, should you be dead? They'd say yes. Well, you're not alive you're not alive on your own.
Right.
You're not.
Right.
Well, there has to be somebody that kept you alive, because you didn't do it when you were shooting that dope or hit that pipe. You didn't do it.
You were headed toward death.
So the brokenness was already there. So when you make the commitment, and I made the commitment to believe in God, my Lord and Savior, and what's happened is I realize now from the work that I do that I was chosen a long time ago. I was chosen to be his advocate, to be a homeless advocate. I was chosen from all my brokenness to go back in brokenness And it's not a road that many can do. So when God chooses you for something, it's very lonely. You don't understand. The people around you can't have the same conversations. People from your past aren't going to go with you on this journey. It's just not going to happen.
It's a personal journey. It's a very personal journey.
Yeah. And you can't really even have conversations with anybody.
Right.
And the only person that you can really have conversations with is God.
Right.
And that's where the thing in my mind came up when I was down there by Skid Row was nobody knows but me, because that's my story. God did. So when they asked me to sell the story or do this, how can I sell it? Because each and every one of us has our own nobody knows but me, God did story.
Right.
Whether it's an abuse or something that happened or whatever, we all have our nobody knows but me story. God did. And that's not for sale with me.
Right. Right. How did you meet your fiance?
You know, going through the brokenness and the loneliness, we'll go back to that story. It was actually on, I was mad at God. I think it was, sometimes, when you're chosen, you just wish you could get out of it, because when you do the work I do, you see the reunification of families. Things happen. It doesn't really last because, our percentages. And I would see people get back with girlfriends, wives with husbands, mothers with children. And I would go back to this room or my house and I'd say, well, what about me? I'm doing this work for you, God. What about me? I'm lonely. I just want somebody to love me and love Lang. And I went to Facebook dating of all places. And I didn't want to go to one of those other sites. And I've never been a pig as a man. I've never been a pig. My mom, for some reason, she's taught me that. Not even my homelessness. What was I that kind of man? And I was never that kind of man. I knew that being caught up in addiction or homelessness or that scene, me being with somebody, it was wrong because it's two sick people and we're trying to get better. And I think that intimacy, it was something it was just embedded in me not to do it. I didn't do it, Tony. So I went on Facebook Marketplace and Marketplace. Yeah, I found that one.
No, not Marketplace.
She'll be mad at me now. Yeah, her name's Laura. So I went on Facebook and I went to the dating site and I'm going through the pictures and I hit this one, I see this one, and then I get hit back and I meet this one girl and she worked. I figured this is the one. She worked at the Ark and Laura knows the story. So she worked at the Ark and she sells, clothes, the homeless people and people like that. It's located in Oxnard. I went out with her one night, and then we went out. Then the next day, she actually called me and said that I made her realize that I'm a nice guy, that she loved her boyfriend, and she called him a redheaded blue jay, and I was blown away. And I said, "Wow." I was like, "Thank you, God. I'm out of this one," because it made no sense about a redheaded blue jay. I guess her boyfriend must have red hair. So I don't know. And she called him blue jay. I just know that I was good. So I ended up getting a like on Laura. And I saw she worked for the county of Los Angeles. And when you're on a dating site, on a site like Facebook, they don't know about your profile because it says Lang. It doesn't say your whole name, but you got to, so she said, "How do I know you're a real person?" And I copied my my Facebook page. Can you hear me still? I copied my Facebook page and I sent it to her. And I said, "What you see is what you get." And I said, you can Google me. And she did. And we ended up meeting, and I knew something about her. And she liked Italian food. So we met at a place in Long Beach. And we got Italian food. And then I brought her these flowers. And then I looked at the waitress and she put the flowers on the table. When she looked up, she blushed. And then from there, we went somewhere. And I didn't know how it was going. All of a sudden, she turned around and said, "Let's take a selfie." She took a picture. And then she made it very clear to me that she was independent. She worked for the county for 22 years. She works for Parks and Recreation. She's a supervisor, and that she don't need no man, and that God had to come first, and that and she knew, obviously she read all about me. I wanted to be upfront because the person that I want in my life, I need them to know everything.
Yeah, exactly.
My addiction, my abuse. There was a question of my past where I admitted that, and I was married once, and to my son's mother, and I did put hands on her. And there was some comments on an article that my ex mentioned to me that I beat her, and Laura asked me about it, and it was out there, and I think her sister mentioned it. And Laura's been through something like that, like a lot of women, and I didn't make any excuses. I answered her I answered her honestly. I said, I want you to know where I'm at, Laura. I work with children tonight. I'm with NASCA. And I said, I don't justify it. And I said, I'm not going to answer how many times. If I answer how many times, then I justify me doing it once too many. Then I'm not going to answer. Right. I said, whether you push a woman, you spit on a woman, you hit a woman, I go once too many. And I said, I will not answer the question because then I justify what I did. So whether it's 100 or 1,000, I said, it doesn't matter. I won't answer you. She accepted that answer. And I made no excuses. Was I in drug? It doesn't matter. I did it. Yeah. So when my ex talks about those things, I don't care what she says, as long as it doesn't go on the realm of sexual abuse or something. If my ex says I broke her jaw, they had it sewn back on, or cut off her arm and they sewed it back on, then I did it. Right. Because it's about her. It's about her healing.
Yeah.
It's about the amends of what I did. And I've taken some chances in the media by writing my story and letting her vent. Yeah. I've had newspapers contact me and say, uh-oh, and I'll see what she says and I'll say, post it. It's about her healing. Yep. She's not at the place to where she can forgive me, and that's okay. But whatever she wants to say, and she will, it's okay. Yes, okay. Absolutely.
Yeah. So how long have you and Laura been together now?
We've been together 10 months. On the 4th, it'll be 10 months.
Okay.
We got engaged June 23rd.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. What it was is I had this big thing in my head. So we were going on this cruise ship, and I called Carnival, and I said, I told them what I do. Could you help me out? It's I come from brokenness. I'm going to marry. I want to get engaged on your ship. Can we put it on the screen and do this big announcement? And they said, sure, we'll do it for you, Lang. So it's going to be big, and then I got a call from somebody. I got a call from a woman who's she was a homeless commission at one time, Peggy, and she goes, I call Ro, what's wrong with you? And she goes, she doesn't want that. And I was going to do something like that because I'm a Lang. Yeah.
I get it.
And so we went somewhere and it was just me and her, and I couldn't wait till July, so I asked her to marry me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
She said yes. Smart lady.
Yeah. Well, we do everything right, by putting God first, and we went to the church and we did it's some test where you do a bunch of questions to see if you're compatible.
Yep.
The church said for the first time out of all their people going to counseling that we were the first couple to be so compatible.
Wow.
And we didn't have to do any counseling, but what happened is I come from a different place because of my abuse in my life. So what happened is we went into couples counseling. And then what happened is she ended up meeting my other therapist that Dr. Lee put in place is Nancy Irwin. She's pretty renowned. She's been on Dr. Lee did that for me. So Laura got to meet with her this week to try to understand why I do the things I do. It comes from a place of I think Laura was in there and she said, Dr. Irwin, she says, I think Lang has ADHD. And Nancy looked at me and goes, most definitely. Okay. I said, I have a lot of things. She goes, yeah, you do. And then Nancy explained to Laura that, that when I do these things, it's like fight or flight type thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because of the abuse. But what's going on is it's like it's not real. And people have to understand that I trudged this road for 6 years before I met somebody.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think a good message in that is to not give up and keep doing what you know you need to do. Tell us about the book that's coming out, the documentary that's coming out. Tell us about those.
Well, those are things, but I want to go back to one thing. And
Yes, sir.
I think that the listener needs to understand, because I think you can learn something from my journey, is that when you have a lot of people caught up in relapse and you have people that want to give up, what's happened is you stop at a certain point in your sobriety. And what's happened is you haven't really learned patience yet. And you get to this point, you're like, well, this isn't really me. What's really in it for me? But what you really have to do is go back to where you were, engage to where you're at, your success, and how you've grown spiritually. And you still got to continue to go forward. We're not able to do that. I've been able to do that. I didn't give up no matter what. Not that I wanted to use, I wanted to die. I would ball up and I would ball up in my bathroom and I would cry. And I'd say, God, why? I don't want to be an advocate. I don't want to do this, but I knew I had to finish the story. And what's happened is when you're there and you trust in your higher power, we'll do that for the audience. But when you trust in God, God will reward you over and beyond if you give back what he's giving you. And that is a responsibility, I believe, that we all have in recovery. I can't speak for the normie, but in recovery, when you get sober, your life has been saved. And it's not by you, because if you were doing it on your own, you wouldn't be at where you're at today. And you need to gauge that and understand that the person that's done this for you, it's not you, it's your higher power, it's God. And that you have a debt to pay back and you have to give that back. And it comes with a responsibility being sober. And I think a lot of people can't handle that, because those of us that are caught up in addiction and being molested, being sexually abused, whatever it is, when you have your life back, you have a responsibility to pay that debt back, especially when you're an individual such as myself. And I kept trudging, and I've been rewarded over and beyond. When I'm with Laura, I've had my first Christmas. I've had my first Thanksgiving.
Amazing.
I know what love is. I know what it's not like to be a candle blowing in the wind, elusive, a life unknown. I'm not there. They used to write that about me.
Yep.
I'm not a pariah with 9 lives, coming from Skid Row. I come from Skid Row to the front row with God's love and grace, and I'm free. And it's just, since Laura's come into my life, lots of things have happened. It's sorted. And I actually met Chris Epstein at church. I met him and his wife, Stacy. They're with Market Street Productions.
Okay.
They've done some films. Chris is a photographer. His wife's a producer. They're connected to a lot of different production companies. I get to go to Burbank. I met him at church. We sat down. The story believes it had to be told, and we become good friends. I get to hang out with Chris. I get to hang out with his wife, his 2 daughters. I go to Burbank Studios and get to go in the studios there and see where movies are made, and it's been overwhelming. He believes in me, and he believes that the story should be told.
And when will it be released?
He's working on it now. So
okay.
When you get something like this, right now we're working with Dr. Lee. There's paperwork has to go back and forth. As far as Dr. Lee Children Night really brings the story in the tow. How we met, because she's rescued over 12,000 children, and anything that gets done with a nonprofit like Children Night, it has to be done the way she wants it.
Is that Children of the Night?
Yeah, Children Night. It's out of LA. Yeah.
Okay.
Dr. Lee is she just got back. She works with law enforcement.
Okay.
She worked in regards to talking about trafficking children.
Yep.
She's done her educational thing that's called The Pimp and the Gang. She got the Presidential Award from Ronald Reagan. She's in the Frederick or something museum. Her portrait, and she loves me. She loves me. She loves me. So the story going back to 1980, 1981 is about, we got this thing with Diddy, but it's about a story that basically what I wanted was a story and to tell the truth so that other survivors can say, finally, somebody's told my story.
Right.
And I'm no longer scared. And yes, this is what these people did to me. You know,
Right.
it was running rapid back then, you know, in Hollywood. It still does.
Yep.
But it kind of starts back there. And then you got the Epsteins, and then we got the Diddy thing, but it's been going on forever. But it's a story that's been untold.
Right.
And yeah, we've been very fortunate. There's a musician, an artist. His name's Seth Addison, and he's a Christian. And we've been in contact with him for the song. It's called Proof. If you're, the song's a beautiful song. It's called Proof, and it's by Seth Addison. So we're trying to get permission on that. So we're working on a lot of things. So I guess in the business, you should know there's the sizzle, right? You do something, it's the sizzle.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So so there'll be a sizzle, I don't know, July or something. But then we'll be talking about the book.
Okay.
So I got Chris Castanero, used to work for Sony, and you know, UC Berkeley, all that stuff. And he's one of the writers. And that'll be Nobody Knows But Me, God Did. And the documentary is something completely different than the book.
Right.
So you know, what's funny is Chris and I go into discussions, and you know, I see a lot of people doing podcasts, and I see a lot of people that have programs doing podcasts. You know, and they show their wonderful homes, you know, and they talk about things that they really don't. You know, I mean, I don't want to be that person. You know, that showing, you know, this. I just want to tell my story.
Yep.
And see what you get out of it. You know, one of the things, and I'm doing it with you, so it will be told, is I meet with a lot of people, and they have the homes or nice, and Lang, you could have this home, and I say, I don't want a home that goes, or, you know, Lang, you can have this car, I want that. And I sat down with Chris, and you know, we're like best friends, and I said, I want to make it very clear. And he goes, go ahead. You know, he has other people involved. And I said, I'm making it very clear right now. And I want your audience to hear this, because I have to keep my word. That's, you know, the first thing that comes out of my mouth is the first thing that you hear, but it's the first thing that I hear. You know what I mean? So, you know, I have to keep my word. You know, that's what I do. I told Chris, I said, I know where this will go. And I said, you know, when I sat down with my attorneys, they said, Lang, it has to be in a perfect world. They said, what do you want? And I said, at least everything once. And, you know, I wanted this, you know, I wanted the book to tell my story, you know, you know, documentary is a gift. And I told Chris, I said, when this comes out, I said, you know, the attorneys or the publicists or whatever, you guys, whatever's with me. I said, I need to make it very clear that you're going to only get me once. You're only going to interview me once.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to ride in no limo. I'm not going to do it.
Mm.
I need to be true to me. So they said, what do you mean by that? I said, because I have ego. I'm an addict, and I have ego, and I've learned from that's not my amigo. And I know me. And I said, I have Laura. And I said, what that means is wherever this goes, they can talk to me one time. But I said, besides that, I'm not doing nothing else. I'm not traveling. I'm not doing nothing. When the book comes out, if that's the way God wants it, we could talk about that one time. I'm not going on book signing. I'm not doing it. I don't want that. I just want to know that I've left something to tell my story, what God has done for me. And I want to go with Laura.
Yep.
I just want to, I know that I've kept my promise, and I want to leave that as a legacy. And I want people to see that I was true to what I said. I know about ego. I have one. I know it's bad news. And I made it, and you won't see me get no limo, and they talk about, and you won't see me interviewing more than once.
Okay, I'd had you twice. I'm going to take a win.
Well, you know what I'm saying, yeah. I mean, that's about, you know, I'm trying to sell, so I'm not trying to. I don't want to sell anything.
I know. So when is the book coming out, Lang? When do we expect the book?
I think what's happened is Rick. I think we're talking about self-publishing, or we're going to go with a publishing house a friend of mine has. We're looking at. I think something talked about in May.
Okay.
It'll be talked about in May. We're looking at July or August, I think.
Okay.
So it depends on where they're at with the documentary. There's a lot of legalities. Just already been filming. So I know he's going to do there'll be a sizzle that goes out with that. Then they'll start working on my social media and, websites and all of that. I think starting in April, all that
Okay.
will start changing up and stuff like that to get the attention of the audience.
Okay. Well, you have my email, so I want you to please keep me posted on the book, on the documentary. I think your story is important. I think the fact that you have, come through it, you're clean and sober, your life is at a whole new level than it was even when I talked to you before. And you were clean and sober when I talked to you before. So you've gone like from here, like out the top, which is pretty cool. And I think that, and I've said this before in the podcast, a lot of people don't want to tell a story like yours. And the fact that you're willing to do that, I think is huge. And definitely keep me posted so I can keep our listeners posted.
Oh, absolutely. Before we go, I want to do a shout out to a lady named Annabelle. I've been very blessed. For the first time, I've had a conversation with an elected official, and I'm working now back with the homeless here in Oxnard. And I met this lady named Annabelle, and she has a nonprofit which is called Believe in Ventura County. And it's believe.org, and it's a Christian outreach. And we were actually at public comments last night in Oxnard, and I just wanted to say hello to her. And she does the work she does, and I sent her some pictures of us, and I sent her something last night, and I said, yes, I'm an advocate, but you're also my advocate.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, you're one of God's angels that won't let me fall, and so are you, Joni.
Oh, thank you.
People have to understand that the people in our lives believe in us, and the end this is that the interviews and all that other stuff. I get called to do a lot of stuff. And what's happened is there's not enough chairs because Lang's still learning Lang. So when I see a lot of these people doing a lot of things, I kind of look at it differently, because if I get called on something to tell my story, I can tell my story, but I can't tell you why Lang's really here. What I can do is I can tell you Lang's here for people like Joni, like Rick, like my pastors. Talk to them, because it was those people that believed in me for why I'm here today. So anything besides that, I think becomes your ego or becomes vanity, because I don't know. I'm still on this road, a journey of recovery. I'm in a situation where I'm trying to learn to be a grown up, and I'm still learning Lang. You can't do that in 6 years or 7 years, and people really need to understand that it's a process and it's a lifelong thing. But I have to look around and understand that I'm here today because it's about God's angels that won't let Lang fall. I'm not here because of me. No. I'm here because of you, and because of all the people that believe in Lang and his story. And number one, God. I'm just a guy trying to get.
Well, I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad you do what you do, and I'm glad you found love. I think that's it's wonderful. I've been married 47 years this year, I think. So I can appreciate it, and I appreciate you and appreciate you sharing your story. Thank you, Lang.
You know what love is when you meet somebody and all the yesterdays go away.
That's right.
And you can live at that moment. And I get to see a woman that's smiling like you right now. You're very beautiful. And Laura looks at me like that, and I could see somebody with real happiness and real love. And you mean a lot to me.
Awesome. Thank you, Lang. Thank you. Thank you for listening. We'll be back again with another interview next week. And we hope that you have a fabulous new year. If you or someone you know needs to get into treatment, please do it. Please don't wait. It's not going to get better, not until you get clean and sober. Thank you for listening. Next week.
You have been listening to the Addiction Podcast, Point of No Return. For more information, reach out to us on Facebook or go to www.theaddictionpodcast.com. Our email is theaddictionpodcast@yahoo.com.